Throughout the history of the world, 44.7 million people have had or do have PTSD. Both books, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut and Night by Elie Wiesel, talk about the struggles of PTSD. Slaughterhouse-Five is an anti-war book that talks about the bombing of Dresden, a German city. Vonnegut creates a character named Billy Pilgrim who becomes unstuck in time from what we later find out is his PTSD. Night is a memoir about Elie's personal experience as a Jewish prisoner during the Holocaust. Elie describes the harsh treatment and him and the other Jews received. Billy Pilgrim and Elie Wiesel are similar as they both struggle from PTSD and become emotionally detached as a result of the war. But they differ in the way they cope with trauma, which illustrates the author's message to prevent war from occurring in the future.
Elie and Billy both experienced PTSD from the bombing of Dresden and the Holocaust, and it greatly impacted their lives. The war made a huge impact on them mentally and physically. Elie explains how that first night at war will stick with him forever. Never shall I ever forget that night, the first night in camp that turned my life into one long night, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget those things, even were I condemned to live as long as God himself. Never. Elie will always remember his first night at camp. His experience at camp has impacted him and changed his life forever. He remembers everything that happened when he was in prison, and it will always be a part of who he is. Billy says that he first came unstuck in time in 1944, long before his trip to Tralfamadore. The Tralfamadorians didn't have to do with his coming unstuck. They were simply able to give him insights into what was really going on. Billy Pilgrim is afflicted with PTSD, causing him to be unstuck in time. Being unstuck in time also brings him back to his traumas in the war. He wakes up and falls asleep in World War II continuously. Both Billy and Elie go through PTSD in the war.
Billy Pilgrim and Elie Wiesel both use different coping tactics in order to live with the trauma that is left with them from their own experiences at war. In each novel, both characters are deeply impacted by the cruel war and each of their mentalities are altered permanently. However, they both survived and developed their own strategies for dealing with their gruesome flashbacks that the war caused them. When Elie Wiesel was in the camps, he would often close his eyes. He explains, "But all I had to do was close my eyes to see a whole world pass before me, to dream of another life." Elie had witnessed monstrous things happen before him during his time spent in the concentration camps. Slowly but surely, hope was lost, and his faith began to fade. In order to deal with the depression and frustration his situation caused him, he closed his eyes and imagined that he was dreaming. When Elie closed his eyes, he can escape to another world far away from the violent one he is living in. Before being introduced to such a brutal reality, Elie was an innocent boy who was very in touch with his faith. When he was forced to come to the realization that the world was truly an evil place, his innocence was ripped out from under him, and he questioned his religion for the first time in his life. As for Billy Pilgrim, he lives the remainder of his life after war unstuck in time. Similar to Elie Wiesel, Billy is living a different life inside of his head. In his mind, he goes to another place called Tralfamadore, where there are Tralfamadorians who live by a certain philosophy that is often mentioned in the novel. One of them explains, "All time is time. It does not change. It does not lend itself to warnings or explanations. It simply is. Take it moment by moment, and you will find that we all are, as I've said before, bugs in amber." After experiencing the bombing of Dresden and struggling with PTSD as an aftermath, Billy adopts the Tralfamadorian lifestyle and begins to lose his emotions toward real and devastating life events. Because the Tralfamadorians believe that if something is happening, it is only happening in one moment. In every other moment, everything is okay. This is a helpful coping strategy for Billy to believe this, because he does not find any situation or event to be groundbreaking. His empathy towards death and tragic accidents gradually fades away because the Tralfamadorians had taught him to only focus on the good things. Billy primarily deals with his trauma by living by the Tralfamadorian lifestyle that he created in his mind. Elie Wiesel and Billy Pilgrim each cope differently with the effects the war had on them. They are similar in the way they wander away in their own minds to escape the world they are living in.
To continue, both Ellie and Billy show signs of feeling emotionless after their traumatic war experiences. This helps support the prevention of war by demonstrating the emotional effect on the two. For Ellie, the horrifying sight of death was so common it no longer impacted him. The thousands of people who died daily in Auschwitz and Birkenau in the crematoria no longer troubled me. Furthermore, being held in Auschwitz had changed Ellie's view on life. Since arriving, he has lost his morals, his faith, and more importantly, his faith in humanity. When Ellie says, "The thousands of people who died daily in Auschwitz and Birkenau," shows how common death merely was. Ellie was so used to death that it demoted his ideals and motivation for survival. This is a prime example of how the cruel nature of war can completely change a person and why the prevention of war is necessary. Similarly, Billy also has shown various signs of emotionless feelings. By being in the war, Billy understands from a first-hand perspective the common destruction of death. Before they got their names and numbers in that book, they were missing in action and probably dead. So it goes. The emotionless feeling is shown through this quote with death. When people die, it is a serious event taken with honor, but since death is so common, in the book, Billy uses, "so it goes." This phrase is said with little emotion behind it, which supports Billy's feelings of emotionless. In other words, Billy doesn't take death too serious due to being used to it. In finalization, both Billy and Ellie indicate feelings of emotionless after experiencing war firsthand. They both get used to the idea of death, which entirely supports the prevention of war.
Through the similarities Billy and Ellie have with their PTSD and emotional detachment, and the difference of coping with their traumas, both characters are used to portray the author's message of preventing history from repeating itself and stopping future wars from occurring. The authors want people to make a change and be assets to their communities. They are hoping groups of people will build bonds and strengthen relationships to create more peace. Throughout both SH5 and Night, the authors show many horrid and horrific moments and treatments of war. The book gives the readers insight on what it was like for the soldiers at the time to go through such a horrendous period of time and the effects it had on the individuals. Kurt and Ellie want the readers to understand what effects the war had on the soldiers who risked their lives for their nation. They don't want people to avert and completely forget what took place, as that is unfair to those who were affected. The tragedies of war should be remembered and always be in the back of everyone's mind, so their ways of life are changed for the better. As a community, nations around the world should work together to achieve the goal of world peace, to provide a great life for the future youth, and to prevent any other devastating events such as the Holocaust to occur.